What's up, guys? Clay Westfall here, aka Finesse God, with Bushwhacker Bait Company, and I am going to talk to you today about a very interesting technique. It is the loop knot drop shot. So this is something that I feel like gives me an extreme competitive advantage. Um, I've done this long enough and experimented with drop shotting itself to where I recognize this as a very beneficial addition to the technique. And so I think a lot of people out there are used to fishing drop shots. I mean, it's nothing that's really too new. Um, Maybe not as much on in the South as opposed to like the West Coast, which is where I grew up fishing, but um, it's something that I do a lot, and I just want to add one small kind of subtlety to the technique. I think it makes a huge difference, and I highly recommend that you do this. So what I'm talking about is the loop knot drop shot. Basically, here's my little mock fishing rod. I have some string hanging. It's not going to be super easy to see the string, so I apologize ahead of time for that. But what I'm doing is normally when I have my string come down and I want to tie I want to tie the hook on in a Palomar knot. I'll go through the eye, I'll go back through again, and I'll kind of pull a long tag line out so that I have a little bit of room for a leader, and I'll go ahead and tie my Palomar. I'll have the hook on, and then I'll just clip my weight to the end. So I'll have my little clip-on weight. I'll just clip that to the tag, and then I've got my drop shot hook directly tied to the line. And I want to emphasize that the hook eye would be basically right up against the line the whole time. So it's more of the hook is more isolated and positioned in such a way that it doesn't have a ton of rotational movement. And so this loop knot is something that adds another dimension to your presentation. So what I do basically is I start out by going through the loop, or the hook eye, excuse me. So now I've just got the hook freely moving on this piece of line. Now what I do is I build myself a leader by pulling extra line through the hook eye. Then I have the line in front of me. I tie an overhand knot, and now I have this little loop here. So I've got this is my tag line, which is gonna be the side that has the weight clip on. So I've got this loop built. You know, you could experiment with what length you want it to be, or what, how large, but that to me is a few inches, something like that. So what I do is I will keep taking this tag in and passing it through here, through the center of this loop. I'll do this probably, I don't know, like 7 times. Just keep going through. Keep going through. I don't know how many times I went through, like 4 or 5. But I had already gone through once. So now I have this position this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip on my weight to the end. If I can find it. Yep, here it is. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I still got the line on here. Boom. I'm going to clip on my weight. I can actually wait to clip on my weight, honestly. So I'm just going to focus on the loop itself. So what I've done is by having all these loops that were formed by me putting the line through, I now can take the hook and I could pass it through one of the wraps, if that makes sense. So if you look closely, you've got a whole bunch of wraps around the top. It's kind of hard to see, but they're there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the hook through one of those loops. This is very key. So I'll put the hook point through one of those hoops, and it's going to be like splitting hairs. But when you get it, you pull the hook back through. And now you have this shape right here. So you got the loop. So I'm going to moisten my line. And I'm going to kind of pull simultaneously while I'm holding it down and cinch it. Boom. That's locked into place. And you see I've got that nicely, it could be a little bit better seated, to be honest, but that's basically what the loops are going to look like, the knot. And so I have this free swinging here. Free swinging, like really important. So then I'll go and I'll tie my weight on here. Basically, you know, I don't use, you don't have to tie it, but I'll crimp my weight on here. Boom, like this. And so now I'm in a situation where I've got the weight and I've got the loop. And so when this is sitting on the bottom, as you can imagine, the weight's sitting on the bottom, and this is like basically free swinging. So this is now, it can swing. So there's two ways that it can swing. It swings around the line. The loop itself swings around the line, and then also the hook goes up and down on the loop, the open loop. So you've added a whole nother dimension of movement to your drop shot. And I promise you, this is a huge deal. I mean, I'm just going to brag on it for a second, and I think you'll understand. Before I do so, by the way, I believe this is called the dropper loop, is this loop that I just built here. So it's a pretty straightforward, easy loop to do. But like I said, overhand knot, about 7 wraps total. Take the hook point and pass it through one of those loops towards the center, preferably, so that you have a balanced. If you go towards the center of those loops, you'll have a balanced amount of knot on both sides. Mine's a little off center, and it could be seated better. But that's the whole point, is now you have this hook that's just freely moving. But the action is incredible. I mean, it's freaking incredible. So I would say that this is absolutely, the details like this are not off the shelf like standard details. This is something that, like, you'll hear drop shot, or you'll have some West Coast hotshot guy come into like the South and, you know, oh, you know, I fish a lot of drop shots, shaky head, all this stuff. It's becoming a little bit more mainstream now, but it's still like, okay, cool. Like, wow, that's a good idea. I'll do a drop shot for my tournament or whatever. But when you go to something like this is the subtlety, the differentiator, and this is what takes you to that next level, I think. I mean, I'm always looking at ways, finesse fishing wise, to optimize my performance and differentiate myself from everybody else. So, you know, obviously you can do like a nose hook on here, you could do a wacky style, but the other thing is when I put my hook on my bait, number one is this is a little bit bigger of a hook than I normally like to use. I try to use as small as I possibly can, to where there's still a portion that comes out of the worm, and it's, you know, there's still enough material there to hook the fish. But I like it to be as low profile as possible. Also the line, I would never use this line. This is like big line. I'd use like 6 pound or 4 pound. But I always, whenever I nose hook, I go through the very, 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 very tip of the worm to where there's barely any material in there, because the less material you have for the worm versus the hook, like the less that you have that's hooked, the more free it moves. So if I were to take this hook out and kind of go back a little bit farther, like somewhere in here, for example, now that's just very lacking of action. You want as long as you want it to be at the very, very, very tip. Like, I mean the very tip, almost skin hooked, if you can, just barely. Boom. And that just gives you the maximum action. Yeah, you're going to lose worms. You will lose worms that way. Number one, that's a guarantee. But if you really want maximum action, I mean, I don't know. This is what I would do. And also, like I said, I go much smaller with that hook. But the whole point is just this dropper loop. that I have built into here. You know, if it's crystal clear, I might go a little bit smaller on the loop just because I don't want them to feel the loop. They could feel the line in the water. So now what you're doing, instead of having a diameter of one line, you have a diameter of three lines in close proximity. I maybe that's being too particular, but for me it makes a difference, and I believe it makes a difference. That's what matters. So that's the dropper loop, and it's I'm telling you guys, this is not. I am making a point now on my YouTube channel and just in life to put out there the information that I am a specialist at, and mine is finesse fishing. So that's what I'm sharing with you guys. I hope it works out really well. Do with it what you may, but I promise you, it's great info, and you can't go wrong with it. Thank you so much, and please stay tuned for my next videos coming up. Super valuable secret information on finesse fishing. Thanks.